Alright, welcome back you freaks. Sorry it's been a minute. For today's Monster Mash, I'm taking inspiration from the Marauder from Evil Dead Rise. Although not the strongest of the Evil Dead franchise, it did introduce a fantastic new monster, the Marauder. In the movie, the Marauder was the result of the infected family being mushed together into a six-legged, three-headed beast, which seems oddly fitting with my video's victim, the Lunchley Boys. Logan Paul, KSI, and Mr. Beast.
Lunchley versus Lunchley. With Lunchley, you get double the amount of liquid. Mine has no sugar.
Our pizza uses real cheese. Theirs, as it says on their box, is mozzarella.
Now looking at Google Trends, this was topical around 2 months ago, which for me is right on time. I've also been on holidays, so thanks for being patient. Now as for the build, I started with a main skeletal armature before adding the tops and bottoms of 2 other skeletons before filling in the armature with some base layers of clay. Once I had a rough, bulked out form, it was time to start building up the anatomy. I started with the lower limbs, building up the calf muscles, quads and hamstrings. I tend to start with small thin blobs to make up what would be the muscle belly shape, then I come in with a sculpting tool where I go in and refine the shape, before using my silicone tool to smooth down any edges just to make the anatomy a little bit more cohesive. I can't recommend enough having an anatomy textbook handy, it just makes the shaping and refining so much easier. Now look, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey Daisy, why'd you pick these bozos to make fun of? Look, it's not just the crypto scamming, the god-awful products, the regular scamming, desecration of dead bodies, and fetishization of wealth. I'm sure they're alright guys. It's just more that they seem to push themselves into every single imaginable space. Everywhere online, I see them. Dude, I just don't care. Take your undeserved millions and go away. Stop trying to create new things that nobody wants. Also, have you noticed the amount of commentary channels now that kind of popped up around the Mr. Beast stuff? It's nuts, hey? Anyway, back to the build. This was a great build to work more on my hands, sort of building skills. So I normally start with 2 flattened oval blobs and chop the top off. I'll cut 4 lengths into the flattened blob to make the fingers before the slow process of pulling and twisting to lengthen the distance. I find it's always better to get the hands pretty much finished before you add the smaller details like knuckles or the thumbs. With all the smaller details smoothed out and positioned in the right spots, it was time for a big bag to lock everything in. While my monster was curing, let's start on a base. I started with a 6x6 inch canvas frame. I used some foam core board to increase the height and a gesso board as the base before a final layer of thin foam sheet. To add to the scenery, I used XPS foam to create what would be stone ruins. To keep on theme, I used a cookie cutter and some real ass rocks for texturing, and I crafted a stone prime bottle poking out of the ground, as well as some other rocks. Once I was happy with the placement, everything got locked in place. After this, everything was sealed with some white glue, and to fill in the deficits, I used some modeling paste. Once this was all dried, I made a dirt sludge out of sand, plaster of Paris, small pebbles, glue, and some water. The base then got a thick layer of sludge, which was put down and textured. Now, did the sludge mix make the molding paste redundant? You betcha. Once this was done, I garnished the still wet surface with some sand, small rocks, before locking it in place with a spray of watered down glue. Now that's amore. When it came to working on the feet, it was a very similar process to the hands, but you just don't really have to define the toes as much. I find that you can get that extra sense of realism by spending a little bit more time defining the ankle bones, as well as the indentation around the back of the foot where the Achilles tendon would have. The rest of the build was fairly similar to what it was before. I really wanted to emulate the twisted limbs seen in the Marauder in Evil Dead Rise, so having limbs poking out at angles they would otherwise be, or joints in positions that would suggest that they're dislocated. It just makes everything extra fun. Now with my Marauder now looking like an orgy that went horribly wrong, I decided to go on a holiday to New Zealand. Alright, now it's story time baby. Time to lay down the law. Now I get a bit bored of having to script and explain everything I do when you, as an audience, can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm making a hand. Now I'm making another hand. It gets very tedious to write it, record it, when you know exactly what I'm doing. But today I'm doing something a little bit different and doing some world building. I'm going to explain the lore behind the Marauder and at least give you the story about how this beast came to be. So indulge me for a moment. It's the 37th of Bestiary 2072, and the world is a very different place. The gold standard has been replaced by the Hawk Tour coin, leading to devastating economic collapse, creating a society of serfdom. Pride has replaced the water and agriculture grinds to a halt as lunch leaf becomes the sole ingredient in the food pyramid. Feastables are still on the shelves because even in the face of a global famine, people still won't eat it. The world now revolves around a central citadel controlled by Paul, Beast and KSI, which the elite reside. The remaining 99% live outside these fortified walls. On this fateful day, there were rumblings from the east. The rebels, a small insurgent group led by Big Justice, stormed the capital. In one of the bloodiest days the capital has ever seen, Big Justice and his band of rebels overthrow the Beast Paul KSI government as they're exiled from the citadel to the outer badlands of Paul's. The overthrow led to a new hope for an age of prosperity, peace and forgiveness. On the day of Big Justice's inauguration, it becomes evident a coup is arising within his inner cabinet. Before Big Justice can be sworn in, the Citadel's nuclear arsenal launches into the sky, raining down on the outer lands of the Citadel, killing millions and leading to the irradiation of the outer reaches of the Badlands. Standing at the Capitol steps, Big Justice is blindsided as to who took over the weaponry. The Rizzler, a traitor to his party, takes responsibility. As his second act of defiance, the Rizzler orders the beheading of Big Justice at the steps of the Capitol building as the Rizzler takes his seat at the Golden Throne as the new unquestioned leader of the Citadel. All hail Rizzler and his 20,000-year reign. From the ruins of New Paulson and the relics of Prime and Lunchleaf, remnants of an age that once was, a creature emerges from the irradiated Earth, the Marauder, with one goal: to overthrow the new regime that exiled them, and of course, to try to sell poison and crypto assets to children. So now for the paint job. Once the beast was baked and cured one final time, I hit it with a black undercoat. I then put down a fleshy tone base colour for Beast and Logan Paul's fleshy bits and a darker fleshy tone for KSI's fleshy bits. Now because I'm working with lighter shades of hair, I placed down a watery base coat of flesh tone on the facial hair as well as any sort of shorter head hair. To make the skins blend a little bit more seamlessly, I mixed the two flesh tones and painted them over the seam lines before smoothing out the transition with an airbrush. It's made it look as if the fellas were more blended together as opposed to just welded. Once this was done, I painted a combination of browns and yellows for the base colours of the hair, eyebrows and beards. I did some further detailing, making the shorts a green colour and added accents to KSI's dreadlocks, facial hair and bandana. Once all the base colours and details were completed, I started with a watered down brown wash for Logan's hair. With the first wash dried, the whole piece got a thinned down black wash to let those details pop. It also mutes some of the vibrancy and adds to some of the griminess. With that wash done, I went over the hair details with a dry brush just to bring some of that colour back. To finalise the paint job, some of the hands and feet got a grime wash just to help to blend the piece into the base. With the base all dried and ready to finish off, we kept it simple, keeping in mind that this creature is emerging from scorched earth. So a black base colour, followed by several tones of grey and white dry brushing to bring out some of the details. To tie things together, the deeper recesses got some puddles of grime, and that makes the piece. If you stuck around this far, thanks again for watching. And if you're liking what I'm doing, even if you're not liking what I'm doing, please like and subscribe. They can't stop. And if you've got any ideas for monster mashes, throw it in the comments, and thanks again for your support this year.